This episode of The Startup Life is brought to you by People Ready. Startup Nation, you have a lot on your plate. The last thing you need to stress about is finding quality staff or the available work you need to be successful. Save time and headache by working with a trusted staffing partner that meets your everyday needs. People Ready is a national staffing provider with over 600 locations across the country and 30 plus years of experience serving people just like you. They specialize in a variety of industries including retail, manufacturing, logistics, general cleaning, hospitality, construction, and more. People Ready understands that you're busy and on the go. That's where their mobile app, JobStack, comes in. Use the app to place orders or find work 24/7 or wherever you are. And as social distancing continues to change the way we interact with customers, colleagues, and our everyday lives, JobStack provides the ability to find the right temporary workers or work you need while eliminating the amount of physical touch points needed in the staffing process. Visit peopleready.com/startup life to learn more about how you can partner with People Ready. Hey Startup Nation, so clearly if you're listening to this, we ran out of time on radio and we don't like to make our radio partners upset with us. But we still want to give you that extra content. So that bonus content of the Startup Life begins now.
So for all the types of clients, and you know, I've been very lucky in my career to have some terrific clients and great opportunities where I really have to be on my toes. So much of it that I do is really training people to think about how to make that match more effectively. I'll tell you another thing, Dominic. I was asked to, my 40th college reunion was supposed to be next weekend, but they've asked me and some other people to be on a panel. That'll be a virtual panel, but it's a really, and they have some there's some very famous people on this panel, actually. And I just feel like I'm on this panel. What's wrong with this picture? Who's this guy? My wife said, well, just be the comic relief and you'll be fine. But honestly, I have a lot of things to say. Right. The topic is about trust. It's about trust. And of course, it's very broad, and there's some political people and some journalism and law people on this panel. Right. And so what I bring, I think, is the issue about in business communication, but also the concept of trust that we have in our everyday lives. And when I'm working with, let's say, a fund manager who's trying to sell his or her fund to an investor, sure. And let's say it's a commodity fund, not meaning like it's gold, that kind of commodity, but it's something that's not very different from what anyone else is selling. I have to go out, I have to help people say, all right, what differentiates my product from yours? And especially if it's kind of the same. So then I said, take returns off the table. So it has to be, if I'm going to have someone invest my money for me, there has to be a sign of trust. So how are you going to demonstrate trust? And then I challenge people and I say, when in your private life, how do you decide something as simple as who's going to paint your house to who's going to be the surgeon to operate on your child? Right? So it's not just, okay, the painting house might be best price, someone who does a good job for my neighbor, someone I can trust to do a good job because I can see it. All right, what about the one who's going to operate on your child? How are you going to feel comfortable that you trust somebody? So I ask it, okay, so let's turn it around. If you're trying to sell you as someone who's trustworthy, how can you prove that? How can you prove that to me? How can I prove to you, Dominic, that I'm trustworthy? And how can you feel comfortable after we've spoken and you've done your research that you say, okay, I'm ready to take that leap of faith? And I think it's a really interesting concept because we deal with it in our lives. We are satisfied with our due diligence about comfort level up to a certain point. And then we have to just jump in and decide. So when I work with people, I have to help them with that process to, if I'm going to sell something, well, here's 3 people I'd like you to talk to that I've done work for. And I want you to ask them for their unbiased opinion and how they have succeeded in their goals based on working with me. So it always helps to have that ready. Or if you'd like, I can help you with a problem you did in the past. I'll tell you how I would have approached it. And I don't even know what your outcome is, but this is my approach. Gotcha. So there has to be something that you are ready to do to be able to be prepared for the types of questions that you're going to get about trust or why we should work together. So when I say so much of it is understanding your audience, really think about what these people value more than anything else. Absolutely. And how are you going to be able to prove that?
Absolutely. Now, let me ask you that, quick follow-up if I could, because I imagine sometimes you get a little pushback from
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like so like how do you work through the pushback? Because it's easy to say, hey, this is what I do, and then and they just gobble it up, and then like, hey, everything's good. You cut the check and you move on. But like there's probably times where it's like, I don't know, Peter, and like this, we kind of had this experience and that didn't work, and so what do you do with that pushback?
It's going to be different for everybody.
Right.
In my case, sometimes it's really hard to quantify, which is why I like to set my goals to be consistent with their goals. And I can't necessarily offer a guarantee, but I will say, because my work means a lot to me, that if things have not changed in terms of someone's behavior, in terms of how they're doing something. I mean, I can't say that I'm going to train all your people, that automatically your sales are going to go up. I would like to be able to have that happen, but it's only going to happen if the people buy into what I'm doing, I'm recommending. Right. So, but if you feel that your salespeople haven't hit it, or they're just saying, oh, that was interesting, but I can't put it into my work style, I will go back and I'll say, listen, if you're not satisfied, I'm just going to make sure that I drum it into their heads. But remember, it can't just come from the outsider. It has to come from management. Gotcha. But so there are ways that I've dealt with that. I've never, no one's ever asked me for a complete guarantee or, guarantee or your money back. Right, when you're dealing with a consultant, it is a leap of faith. Right. It definitely is a leap of faith. And I guess the trust that people have to have in me is based on the reputation that I've done it for other people, just the way anyone else would do it. But I'm a victim of exactly the same thing, Dominic, that you only have your reputation to hold you up.
I hear that. And I appreciate that transparency, Peter, because like I said, we have a lot of people who want to be coaches and consultants. And that's one of those things where, they just wish it's always just very smooth, right? And so I appreciate you sharing that. Like, look, there are times where it's like, not so much.
You're right. Sure. Right. But, but part of a consultant too, I might look at someone's consulting, what they do, and I'm just like, oh God, that is so not my style. For me, if I were looking right, this is so not my style. I don't want someone to do an assessment of me every day, or I don't want to do this type of exercise because it's really not relevant. Okay. But other people might find that's very helpful to me because I'm more introspective. Maybe they're more introspective than I am, and they need those type of skills. So the people ask me, when all through all my career, when I had a very specific niche, people would say, how do you become a good consultant? And I would say, really try to find a niche, and I don't want to say exploit it in a bad way, but make sure that you are the expert in that niche, because you have to be able to prove it and do the hard work, but that really helps you get your foot in the door. Right now, we're in a place where we're in a different environment. The world has changed. I don't know. I can't say how things are going to be different, 6 months to a year from now. However, I also know that businesses are really focused on their success, on maintaining strong operations right now. So the consultants that I think are succeeding are perhaps process ones who can really say, all right, how are we going to renegotiate our financial instruments so we can just watch financial, really have better financial planning. I have a feeling that's what's getting in the way, because I've sent a lot of proposals out recently, and from longtime clients, and people say this is great, but right now we just can't focus on this. So if people are going to be entrepreneurs or consultants, I think I'm all for it, but the landscape is just different. And if you can really think in advance, or like, how am I going to take advantage of dislocation 6 months from now, try to be really analytic about what that's going to be. And I don't have the answers yet. I am writing some pieces about what I think the future of communication is. I think leaders have to be much more open and emotional than they were before, and acknowledge how they are handling the pandemic, and how they have to demonstrate that they are one of us. And I also think that we talked about Zoom meetings before. I also think meetings, like Zoom meetings, if you go to 3 in a row, you're like, you just want to take a nap.
Right.
They're so exhausting.
Right.
So anyone who thinks you're going to have a 2-hour Zoom meeting, they're out of their mind.
Right.
You can be much more efficient if you think, and I just wrote a piece on meetings of the future. And I think meetings of the future are ones where there's so much more work pre-meeting. So the meeting really, so everyone comes to an agreement beforehand. And then when you're actually at the meeting, it's all about just affirming what we know or just coming to a consensus about something. So you're not going, no one has to present in details. People will have read it on their own time. And it takes more effort to do that, but man, I think it's going to help people be more efficient.
Absolutely. I believe so too. You know, we're all trying to figure this thing out, but I appreciate you sharing that, you know, leaders have to have a different approach to not just how, you know, building a culture within, you know, from a remote distant type of era, which we're kind of, I guess we're kind of entered and have that communication piece, but also, how just we overall communicate as well. That's definitely a challenge, but you know, it is what it is. This is where we are now. So I appreciate that. So, you know, Peter, you was talking about how, you know, you were supposed to have your 40-year reunion and stuff like that.
Yes.
And I hate that got canceled for you. And we were talking a little bit about off air about how we have a lot of high school seniors who had prom and graduations canceled. We have college, you know, graduating seniors who aren't able to take that last walk through the university center at the school and meet and talk to their professors one last time before they leave college campuses. And now, I mean, you know, you just said it yourself, we're entering in a totally different type of work environment now, as opposed to literally, 2 months ago? And so what is some of that advice you would give that 21, 22, 23-year-old entering the workplace as it is now?
Yeah, it's a great question, Dominic. And I wish I had tons of answers for young people, because I've seen a lot of examples where my nephew included, who is just graduating from college this year. Right. I have a nephew and niece both graduating from college. My nephew had a job offer that was rescinded. He is very close to another one. He has had a couple of job offers that he's turned down.
Gotcha.
My niece, same thing. She had a job offer that she turned down, and she's not sure neither of them has anything set up. Right. I know other people who have great offers, but you know, one of them is in the other part of the country, but he's not sure whether he's supposed to move to go to the other, because is there worth it to move to a place where you're not even supposed to show up? Right. So we're in this big uncertain time, and I just don't have the answers for young people about what the future is going to be, but I hope they can use this time to be as reflective as possible about perhaps really thinking about what they like, what they're truly interested in. You know, what is your passion? And to be fair, I had a lot of jobs after college. It took me a long time to get into the career I ended up in. And I don't want to go back and say, I regret any of those things, because what I got from that was like, I don't want to do this again. Right. But if you have this more introspective time, it's a chance for you to do research, never stop talking to people. Never stop, emailing people and saying, this is what I am. Could we even have a phone conversation about stuff? What's the state of this market? If I were to go into this, what would people do today? People who are employed and can see how their industry has been affected. Yeah, people like talking about their jobs. It's just a hard time for everybody. And if someone came to me, they said, I want to be a consultant. My advice, you cannot be a consultant right away. You really need to develop some skills first, to give yourself some credibility. But but even that, even for me saying that, gives them some bit of knowledge that they can take to the next step. And I just encourage people to use all their networks, their alumni networks, even as much as you don't want to call your father's best friend Brad, he's been nagging you to say, call my friend Brad. He's got some great idea. He's like, Dad, please, I don't want to call him Brad. At some point you might just like, all right, I'll talk to Brad. Just to talk, to talk. But it's not talk. It's also listening. Just saying, this is who I am. This is what I'm interested in. Tell me about your career path, or how are things in your industry today? You'll just learn a little bit more than the stuff you read. And I would use this time now. And hey, listen, the other thing is, if you're fortunate enough to be able to live at home and host for a little bit, try to do some volunteer work if you can. Just make sure that you get up and are busy doing something.
I hear that. I think that's great advice. Clearly, you are somebody's dad, man, because that's amazing advice. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Because I imagine, like, look, there's a lot of, once again, 21, 22, 23-year-olds, and you're already trying to figure it out, and then you throw this thing on top of it.
Right.
And so it's like, you have a lot of people just kind of feeling, a little kind of down, not really sure what to do. But I think that's excellent advice, especially that part where you talk about just kind of figure out a lot of stuff and see what you like. You know what I mean? Be reflective in that part. And you're absolutely right. I'm right there with you. 22, 23 years old. I am not doing what I was doing now, but like even then, I think there was value in just trying some stuff, right?
Yeah. I say that at universities too. I mean, I did it right before the pandemic. I was at a university making a speech, and it was right after winter break and the day before the winter semester started. So most of the people were back, but some people were coming back that night. And I at that point, maybe half of the seniors had jobs. I'm not really sure, but I think the people who were there were people who didn't have jobs. They wanted to come back and get a head start on looking for things. And with social media, you see, certainly this is several months ago already, but people are saying, look at my job. I'm so excited. I'm going to start here. And maybe they have a new T-shirt from their new employer or whatever. And so I just I said, raise your hand here if you feel like a complete loser. And everyone's hand went up there. It's like, well, stop looking at social media and seeing all their friends. And if you get a job, it's just like, knock it off. Right. And then I also said, and also adults in this room, raise your hand here if you're still doing this or we're in the same career you were in when you were 22. And all adults raised their hands. Like I had nothing to, when I was out of school, it had nothing to do with what I do now.
Absolutely.
Nothing.
Yeah. I always say my life is a lot like, if you're familiar with the movie Slumdog Millionaire, where I loved it. All these bits and pieces of things kind of culminated into what I do now. Right?
Yeah.
That's
a great point. That's a really great point, Dominic. And I have to say that when I think about that in retrospect, I kind of feel the same way. I mean, it's a stretch for some stuff, but I know that I would. I mean, that's how I introduced it today. I said, even growing up in New York gave me something that led me to where I am now. And growing up as a sick kid and having to deal with a lot of stuff. Yeah, it's not direct, but it certainly it's built into me somehow.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that. Once again, we're talking to and wrapping up with Peter Yawitz, the author of Flip Flops and Microwave Fish. Once again, amazing book. If you're that graduating senior, it's definitely something you want to put in your entrepreneurial toolkit. And even if you're, a little seasoned like me and Peter here, you definitely want it as a refresher, because it's not only is it a great reminder of some of the things to do in workplace culture and stuff like that, but also it's just funny. It's just a really great, funny book, but also full of valuable information. And speaking of funny, you may not know this about Peter, but in 2005, he won the Nightlight Award for Outstanding Musical Comedy Performance from the New York City Cabaret Jazz and Comedy Critics and the Backstage Magazine Bistro Award for Comedy Writing. So, look. One of the things I said in the review is that in this era of dad jokes, it's the perfect book to read. So you're the comedy writer, man. Like, what's the anatomy of a great dad joke in your opinion?
I don't know. I see when you said great, dad jokes. I try to stay away from dad jokes. I'm not a dad joke guy.
Gotcha.
Someone said that to me, like in the publicity group. They said it's full of dad jokes, and I said, no, it's really not. I think my humor is really more about the absurdity of situations, or people, people putting on airs, which I just want to bang my head. My type of humor is. I bring this up in the book also, but my first, when you start working, you have to learn a couple of acronyms and buzzwords that people use within your organization. I've worked for companies that have so many acronyms that I just like, okay, I'm trying because I want to speak the language here. But then there are these dumb business cliches that people use that are only said because they think it's cool because their boss said them. Right. And it's not just cultural for an organization. It's like corpo speak. And when my first job out of business school, it was just like chock full of them. And I created a cliche bingo board because I was so sick of all the young people emulating the senior people who would say the same things over and over again. It's like, oh God, what a bunch of little copycats. So stuff like that is like anyone who tries to put on airs and they're so transparent about not being authentic. To me, that's grounds for humor.
Gotcha. No,
because and I'll do it to myself. I mean, and listen, I'm a victim of that too.
Right.
I'm someone else's dad, but if I don't show a little self-deprecation, how could anyone take me seriously?
Absolutely. You're definitely right. You definitely do an amazing job of taking the absurd and just leaning in with great, comedy writing and stuff like that. Like I said, I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was.
Thank you.
No, but not hilarious into like making fun of, just like doing what you were doing. So no, I appreciate.
Well,
that.
The things that you're talking about. I was actually looking at it this morning. It's like, oh, that was pretty good. Because I wrote it a while ago, and it took a while to get to publish and everything. Right. There's a thing that I have about understanding what people say. So I have the things like when they say they could mean, but they also could mean, but they really should have said, and they didn't say that before. So like one of them was when they say get it done whenever you get a chance. They could mean I really need it within the hour, but they could also mean I'm not giving you nonsense busy work since I can't think of anything else for you to do. Right. But they really should have said, I'd like you to finish this task within the hour because I'd like to proofread it before I email my boss later today. And they didn't say that because they worry that you will think they're too demanding and pushy if they're too direct. And then the last one in that column I have, when they say, I hate this, they could mean I hate this, but they also could mean I really hate this. But they really should have said, let me tell you why this isn't what we want. And they didn't say that because they don't realize that being overly direct can upset people.
Right.
Anyway, so that's my sense of humor. It's like you have to have a little sense of humor about how people communicate there because there's an underlying motive or fear or whatever.
Right. Thank you for sharing all of that for sure. Peter, what's your entrepreneurial superpower and why?
Maybe my sense of humor. And that's the easiest thing. And I think I have to keep that. When my kids were little, they did a video for me. It was like for Father's Day, and I have two kids. My son said something like, we love you because of your sense of humor. And then my daughter said, and because of your funniness. And my son said, that's the same thing as sense of humor. So I remember that. It's like, so even when they were little, they knew that I was a funny dad. And one of my best friends has kids much later in life. So they're under 10. And we have another friend named Peter that we share in common, but to them I'm Funny Peter. So even they still say like, "Hi, Funny Peter," they call me.
Gotcha. Thank you. For sure. Well, and once again, we want to say thank you so much, Peter, for coming on the show. Once again, Startup Nation, go to peteryawitz.com to check out all the amazing content there. Make sure you go to clearcommunication.net on the website and on the show notes. We have a link there in the show notes for easy access if you're listening to the replay on the podcast as well. And also purchase flip-flops and microwave fish. We have the link there in the show notes as well for easy access to purchase the book. Peter, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, Dominic, it is my complete pleasure. Startup Nation, it's great to get to know you. And Dominic, you're like my number 2 fan after my mother. Fair. But I trust you. But I trust you more than I trust her. So there you go.
Well, you're too nice. Checks in the mail. All right, Startup Nation, if you have an idea, be about that life. Startup life. If you want to let us know what you think about our show, have an idea for a show topic, or would like to advertise on our show, send us a message on the Startup Life Podcast Facebook page. And while you are there, like and follow our page as well. It's a great way for us to engage with you, Startup Nation, and really grow our community. The link is there in the show notes. Subscribe to the show as it can be heard on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, or even on your Facebook timeline or any other platform you like to get your podcast. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts and you find our content valuable, please give us a 5-star rating, as it will help us climb the charts and help more people find our show. You can also listen to the show on the Startup Life Podcast new website. There you will find the all-new startup blog where I write on many topics that are interesting and helpful to you on your path to entrepreneurship. And hey, if you have an idea, be about that life, the startup life. This episode of The Startup Life is brought to you by People Ready. Startup Nation, you have a lot on your plate. The last thing you need to stress about is finding quality staff or the available work you need to be successful. Save time and headache by working with a trusted staffing partner that meets your everyday needs. PeopleReady is a national staffing provider with over 600 locations across the country and 30 plus years of experience serving people just like you. They specialize in a variety of industries including retail, manufacturing, logistics, general cleaning, hospitality, construction, and more. PeopleReady understands that you're busy and on the go. That's where their mobile app, JobStack, comes in. Use the app to place orders or find work 24/7 or wherever you are. And as social distancing continues to change the way we interact with customers, colleagues, and our everyday lives, JobStack provides the ability to find the right temporary workers or work you need while eliminating the amount of physical touch points needed in the staffing process. Visit peopleready.com/startup life to learn more about how you can partner with PeopleReady.